For 6 days, the river through the greatest city on earth ran black. Every man who saw it believed it was blood. There was blood enough that week. But I knelt at the edge of the Tigris in February of 1258, and I put my hand in the water, and it came up dark to the wrist. It was not blood, it was ink. My name is Cassian Vale. I have been alive for a very long time, long enough to have been there. I keep the things people handed me and never came back for. Tonight, I'll show you one. This is a page. Paper. Fine Baghdadi paper. The writing has washed to ghost lines. In the margin, a frame of gold leaf and one diagram, circles within circles, the paths of the planets, still edged in gold, the river could not take. I pulled it from the Tigris that week and knew the hand. His name was Is-Haq. Let me tell you about him, and about the city that drowned its books before it buried its people. Everyone tells this story as the night knowledge died. I stood in the ash, and I am telling you the fire failed. Can you kill what a city knows? The Mongols believed so. Before this candle burns down, you will know what they got wrong. I first came to Baghdad 400 years before the Blackwater, and I studied in the house they called the House of Wisdom. Not a palace, a workshop, translators arguing Aristotle out of Greek and into Arabic. What I remember is the sound, 100 pens at once, which is a kind of rain. Historians will tell you the house's great days were 4 centuries gone by then, that perhaps it was never one grand academy at all. They are right, and it changes nothing. The house had done its work. It had taught a city the habit. By the time the Mongols came, Baghdad did not have a great library. Baghdad was a library. Collections counted in the dozens, and a street of booksellers where Is-Haq worked at a tilted desk, ink so deep under his fingernails his skin had made peace with it. One of those collections held a warning. When I knew him, he was copying the Al-Majest, Ptolemy's great net for catching stars, for a patron who wanted gold leaf in the margins. Is-Haq thought gold was vanity. He laid it anyway, perfectly, and told me why in words I have kept longer than the page. The gold is not for the stars, he said. The gold is so that men will keep the book when they no longer care about the stars. Remember that. It is the whole story, and none of us knew it yet. The great Khan sent his brother west with the largest army, men said, the Mongols had ever gathered in one place. Hulagu, grandson of Genghis Khan, not a madman, an administrator of destruction with Chinese engineers in his train. His orders were simple. If the caliph submits, spare him. If not, Baghdad. At Lamut, the mountain fortress of the assassins, Hulagu took a prisoner worth more than the fortress. Nasir al-Din al-Tusi, astronomer, mathematician, perhaps the finest mind alive, now in the conqueror's service. Remember that name. The Persian chroniclers say that when Hulagu's own astrologer warned that spilling the caliph's blood would make the sun refuse to rise, it was Tusi who answered, "Dry as paper. None of that will happen. Hulagu will reign in the caliph's place." And in the palace sat al-mustasim, 37th caliph of the house of Abbas. The chronicles that call him weak were written by men who needed someone to blame. Hulagu demanded submission. The caliph sent back defiance too limp to frighten and gifts too small to flatter, while his soldiers went unpaid and his vaults stayed shut. 2 centuries later, I would watch an emperor lose a city because he truly could not pay. The caliph could pay, he would not. Baghdad was the navel of Islam. Someone would come. The world was not consulted. And the warning on the shelf? An old historian in Mosul, Ibn al-athir, had watched the first Mongol storm break over the east. and for years he could not bring himself to write it down. When at last he did, he began like this, a dead man's voice speaking from the stacks while there was still time.
For some years I continued averse from mentioning this event, deeming it so horrible that I shrank from recording it. This thing involves the description of the greatest catastrophe and the most dire calamity, of the like of which days and nights are innocent, which befell all men generally, and the Muslims in particular.
That is not a voice from 1258. He died 25 years before Baghdad fell. He grieved the overture and was spared the finale. In Ishaq Street, you could buy his chronicle. Baghdad had read the warning. Baghdad had shelved the warning. 4 weeks before the river turned black, Baghdad still had an army. It caught a Mongol column, blooded it, and camped on the field to celebrate. It was January. It was a floodplain. In the dark, Mongol engineers took apart the dikes of the Dujail Canal. Water has no allegiance. The caliph's soldiers woke, those who woke, to black water rising through a winter night, horses screaming, armor turned to anchor. By dawn, Baghdad had no army, drowned before the siege began, in the dark, by men with shovels. The city still had its walls. It no longer had anything to put behind them. 15 days before the river turned black, the siege lines closed. The floodplain has no stone, so the Mongols hauled rock from days away, and when it ran short, they sawed the date palms into missiles and bombarded the city with its own orchards. Over the walls came arrows carrying promises of safety. The first paper the Mongols sent into the city of paper was a leaflet. 8 days before the river turned black, a stretch of the eastern wall went to the Mongols and stayed theirs. 3 days before, the city gave up. On the 10th of February, Baghdad opened its gates, and the caliph walked out with his sons and 3,000 notables, dressed in their finest, into silence. On the 13th, the army came in. The sack lasted about a week. I will not walk you through the worst of it. There is nothing worth keeping in the details of a city's death. Hulagu himself boasted to the King of France that his army killed 200,000. Later, chroniclers said 800,000, even 2 million. Careful men today start nearer 90,000. No one was left counting, somewhere between a city wounded and a city erased. The stench grew until the conqueror moved his own camp upwind of what he had done. And through that week, church bells, Hulagu's chief wife was a Christian, and at her word, those who sheltered in Baghdad's churches were largely spared. That is what the week sounded like. Bells over ashes. On the 15th of February, they brought the caliph to his treasury. Tusi set down what happened there, and I give it as it comes down to us. Hulagu had a plate of gold put before al-mustasim and told him to eat. The caliph said that gold cannot be eaten. Then why, asked Hulagu, did you keep it instead of paying it to your soldiers? He had no answer. Around the 20th of February, they killed him. The most common account, the one the Mongols themselves would have found fitting, is that he was rolled in a carpet and trampled by horses so that royal blood would not touch the earth. There are other versions. There always are. 500 years and 37 caliphs ended that afternoon without leaving a mark on the ground. During that week, I went down to the river and knelt, and my hand came up black. Now I owe you the truth the historians insist on, because honesty is what this candle is for. No eyewitness wrote down the Black River or the bridge of books a horseman could ride across. Those are the stories Baghdad told afterward. By a historian's rules, legend. But the record has a hole in it the exact shape of 6 days. The men who would have written it were face down in the water. Recording was the thing that was dying. What I remember is the water going dark, page after page turning on the current, one leaf of gold catching the light as it went, like a lamp carried away underwater. So whether the river ran black for 6 days or one channel ran dark for an hour, ask the better question, why a city with no one left to write chose ink of all things to remember itself by. Blood dries, ink stains. The legend is not an exaggeration. It is an accuracy of a different kind. That is the drowning. Now, the ember. Come north with me, 1 year, 1259, to a hill above Mah-Ra-Geh, where masons are raising the strangest revenge ever taken on a conquest. An observatory. Tusi had learned the one grammar conqueror's respect. A king who owns the readers of the sky owns tomorrow. Tradition says he carried thousands of manuscripts out of the ruin of Baghdad. Tradition says the library at Mah-Ra-Geh came to hold 400,000 volumes, gathered from every broken city on the road. I distrust a chronicler's round numbers, and I trust his direction. The page dies. The book does not. And Baghdad was not erased. That is the part the legend leaves out. Much of what the soldiers took was loot, not fuel, and loot gets sold. And a sold book finds a reader. Within a generation, there were working libraries in Baghdad again, under the grandsons of the men who had burned it, grandsons who, soon enough, faced Mecca to pray. The Mus Tansiri Ya Madrasa still stands on the Tigris bank. It watched everything I have told you, and the men who sacked the city have no graves that anyone can find. Can you kill what a city knows? Here is what the Black River taught me. The caliph hoarded gold the way his city believed it could hoard knowledge, and both were lost in the same week. But a book is not an object. The object is only where it sleeps. A book is a relay. It lives each time a hand copies it, sells it, steals it, loves it enough to carry it over a mountain. The Mongols burned the shelves in 7 days. The habit, taught by one house to one city 400 years before, they could not reach. Even Baghdad's death was copied. The river ran black in a story because only a story could carry it. No one remembers Hulagu's victories. Everyone remembers the river. His fires bought him a week. The ink is still running. This is Ishaq's page, a leaf of Ptolemy, copied by a man who thought gold was vanity and laid it perfectly anyway. I pulled it from the Tigris on the 3rd day, wet to the shoulder, because I knew his hand the way you know a voice in another room. The river unwrote his 60 years. The gold held exactly as he promised. The gold is so that men will keep it when they no longer care about the stars. I looked for him for 3 days. I never found him. I found this. I have kept it flat for 700 years because he never signed a page, and somebody should keep what is left of his handwriting. They were the proudest anonymous men who ever lived, the copyists, and everything you have ever read is in their debt. They are gone. The caliph in the carpet, the soldiers under the black water, the old man of the bookseller's street. Remember one of them. Ishaq will do. 60 years at a desk, making sure the dead could keep speaking. It worked. He is speaking now. They are gone, and I am still here to remember them. So now, so are you. Carry them a while. The candle stays lit.